Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for being with us. Today is Tuesday, August 25th. This is a regular voting meeting of the Prescott City Council. Greg, would you like to introduce
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to introduce one of our esteemed clergy at Sacred Heart Parish, Father Raj.
Okay. And then Councilman Lamerson will lead us in the pledge.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Gospel of Matthew, chapter 18, verses 19 and 20. Jesus said, "Whenever two of you on earth agree about anything you pray for, it will be done for you by my Father in heaven. For where two or three come together in my name, I am there with them." God of justice and mercy, thank you for the gift of life and the opportunity to serve the people of our city. Help us to act with character and conviction. Help us to listen with understanding and goodwill. Help us to speak with charity. Give us a spirit of service. Guide us to be the leaders your people need. Help us see the humanity and dignity of those who disagree with us, and to treat all persons, no matter how weak or poor, with the reverence your creation deserves. And finally, Father, renew us with the strength of your presence and the joy of helping to build a community worthy of the human person. We ask this as your sons and daughters, confident in your goodness and love. Amen. Amen. May Almighty God bless you, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Dana, I think you have an announcement.
Yes, I'll do roll call first, and then I'll go ahead and do roll call. Mayor Kirkendall?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Kuknio?
Here.
Councilman Arnold?
Here.
Councilman Blair? Yes. Councilman Lamerson?
Here.
Councilman Lazelle?
Here.
Councilwoman Wilcox?
Here.
All present. And Mr. Mayor, I'd like to announce today is Election Day, and if you are a registered voter in the city of Prescott and you haven't turned in your ballot yet, you can turn it in until 7 p.m. tonight here at City Hall, 201 South Cortez, or at the Pima County election, or the, sorry, Yavapai County elections.
Get in your car.
And Yavapai County elections office at 1015 Fair Street until 7 p.m.
Thank you. Any other announcements?
No,
Great.
at least you didn't say Maricopa.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like that's where we're at. We have one proclamation today, and it couldn't be more appropriate. We're going to ask our own member of the Arizona National Guard and military guy to present the proclamation. Come on up.
Well, it's an honor to do this. This is a proclamation for employer support of the Guard and Reserve Week. Whereas National Guard and Reserve forces comprise nearly half of our nation's military strength and are essential to America's national security, Reserve component forces stand ready to answer the call to serve, whether serving alongside active duty counterparts all across the globe or responding to humanitarian crises at home and abroad. And whereas employers provide critical support to members of the National Guard and Reserve, allowing citizen warriors to serve whenever the nation calls, often foregoing financial gain and making sacrifices in the process. And whereas employer support is stronger than ever, more than 43 years after President Richard Nixon authorized the Secretary of Defense to establish the National Committee for Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve, ESGR, And whereas our nation is in debt to the citizen warriors departing the comforts of home to ensure our freedoms remain intact. Likewise, America pays special tribute to the commitment of dedicated and supportive employers who continue to make service in the reserve components possible. Now, therefore, Marlon D. Kirkendall, Mayor of the City of Prescott, Arizona, does hereby declare August 16 through 22 National Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve Week.
First of all, I'd like to thank Mayor Kirkendall and the City Council for this presentation today. And I'd like to take this opportunity just to tell you a little bit about employee support for the Guard and Reserve, because we don't always do a great job of telling you what we do. We're made up of 4,600 citizens throughout the United States that work directly as volunteers for the Department of Defense in going out there and actively serving in each one of the states, along with 4 territories, our Guard and Reserve members. And we do several things. We have a Heroes to Hire program. We obviously have the Yellow Ribbon Reintegration Program that deals directly with deployed individuals along with individuals returning from deployments. We also work with the USERRA laws to help mediate the differences that may occur between their civilian employers at the time, and many other things. So we want to thank each and every one of you out there that actually do hire our Guard and Reserve members. We're appreciative. These are our citizen soldiers that do serve. And let me give you an idea just how much they serve. Since 9/11, we've had over 906,000 of our citizen soldiers that have been deployed to either Iraq or Afghanistan, and at any one point in time, there's at least 24,000 throughout the United States and our 4 territories that are deployed somewhere in the world to meet whatever crisis that may develop and to protect the freedoms that we so much cherish. I want to also recognize Larry Gray. He's one of the members of our employee support group up here. We have 10 different people that cover northern Arizona, and we're actively out there working with the 15,000 members we have in the state of Arizona that are actually involved in the Guard and Reserve and 7 different military components. So thank you all. We appreciate it. And with that, I'd like to present an updated version of the statement of support to Mayor Kirkendall. They have done one of these every year with the City of Prescott, and now that we have a new Secretary of Defense, Ashton Carter, I wanted to make sure that I got him a revised one that is a new one, and it shows all 7 branches of the service that we represent. So, Mayor, could I present you with this? Maybe come forward and get a picture.
You want the 7 dwarfs?
No, you get up there.
No, just you, Mayor. Go ahead.
There, you get up there. No, get up there.
Just you, Mayor. Yes, you, Mayor.
Larry, come on over here. Let's get you in here, too.
It's unanimous.
Hopefully we can catch the other 7 members and staff.
I thought maybe the 7 branches would fit the 7 dwarfs.
No, you get in the center, okay, and you can hold that.
No green marriages.
That's funny.
Got it?
Yep.
Really good.
And Mayor, while you're coming back, I just want to say, you know, the city's gone through great lengths to be in this program. I remember when we interviewed John Palladini for the first time. It was the first time the city had ever used Skype for an interview, and he was sitting in his barracks in Afghanistan with a single little light on in the dark, and it was the strangest but most memorable interview I ever had. So.
Okay, moving forward to the consent agenda.
Consent agenda. Item 1A, approval of minutes for city council meetings held on July 7th, July 14th, July 28th, August 4th, and August 11th, 2015. Adoption of ordinance number 4950-1488, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, authorizing the granting of a utility easement to Arizona Public Service Company, an Arizona corporation, and authorizing the mayor and staff to execute any and all documents to effectuate said easement. Item C, award of city contract number 2016-044 to Southwest Environmental Incorporated for coating of manholes in an amount not to exceed $16,638.76.
Okay. Any questions, comments on the consent agenda? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
Move to approve consent agenda items 1A through 1C.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Vote, please.
Passes unanimously.
Okay. Okay, we lucked out. We got some more liquor license.
Item 2, Mayor and Council, on today's liquor license consent agenda, there are 2 applications for a Series 15 special event liquor license. Item A is with the National MS Society Arizona chapter, and item B is the Yavapai Exceptional Industries Incorporated. These applications have been reviewed and determined to be in compliance with city requirements and are being recommended for approval. I just wanted to let you know, if you remember, the law states that a physical location may not be issued more than 12 special event licenses during the same calendar year. The Holiday Courtyard has already been approved for 5 special event liquor licenses in calendar year 2015, and the Waters Garden has been approved for 3 special event liquor licenses. So they're still within that 12 for the calendar year.
Now, a calendar year.
Right, calendar year.
Okay. I have a question on the second one. The time and the date of the liquor sales is 8 in the morning until 10 p.m.?
Yes.
And then the time of the event doesn't start until 5 o'clock in the evening.
Yes, we contacted the applicant and then also the Holiday Courtyard. The reason they put 8 a.m. is because they're getting their delivery in the morning. They're getting a delivery in the morning, and they were concerned about the liquor. They do not plan on selling liquor before 5 p.m.
And Mayor, this is what we were talking about several times. That's the buffer, so they stay within compliance of the liquor law, but then they stress the time of the event. That way, not the participants, but the person hosting or sponsoring the event is less likely to be in violation of any state or local laws.
They did indicate that they would not start selling until 5 p.m.
Okay, but they're going to continue till 10 p.m. With liquor sales, but the event's over at 9 o'clock.
Again, that's just, the event stops at 9, but if for some reason there's a 15-minute straggler or for some reason, that's just that buffer, that's all.
Okay, Chris?
And Mayor, I think we might improve this, Dana, by just getting rid of the word sales. I think that throws the confusion in there. We might put date and time of event liquor license and date and time of event. Okay. So we see where the event times run and when the liquor license actually spans that amount of time. I think that would clear it up.
And then we might not want to include Brad Newman. That takes the credibility right away from that.
Okay. Okay. Any comments from the public on that? Do we have a motion?
Oh, okay. Mayor, I move to forward special event liquor license applications 2A and 2B to the Arizona State Liquor Board with a recommendation of approval.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Vote, please.
Passes unanimously.
Okay, Dana, when you're ready, let's go to the regular agenda.
Item 3A, public hearing and consideration of an application adding sampling privileges Series 9S to the active Series 9 liquor store license from Claire Holly Abel, applicant for Walmart Supercenter, number 1417, located at 3050 Highway 69. Mayor and Council, Ms. Abel is requesting to add sampling privileges, a Series 9S, to their active Series 9 liquor store license for Walmart Supercenter. A Series 9S license would allow Walmart to have on-site permanent sampling events using store inventory. The Police Department and the Community Development Department has reviewed the application, and it is in compliance with their rules. The application license fees have been paid, and the application has been posted at the proposed location for the required 20 days. No public comments have been received, and the applicant is in attendance.
Great. Is the applicant? Good. Would you like to come up and catch the heat?
Mayor Kuykendall, members of the council, for your record, my name is Claire Abel, and my address is 702 East Osborne Road in Phoenix. I'm here on behalf of Walmart. I don't know if you're familiar with the changes that they made to the law regarding sampling, but it was really pushed by the local brewers and the local vintners because it's their opportunity to get people to taste their products. And then maybe when they go to the store, instead of picking up a packet of Bud, they'll pick up a locally brewed beer instead.
Sure.
And so that's why Walmart is doing
So
it.
how many times a day can you sample?
How many times a day? An individual
Yeah,
can
you know.
only sample 1 time per day.
That's it?
That's it, I'm sorry, yes, sir.
What if you leave and come back?
There's two Walmarts, Mayor.
Yeah. Question? No. Anybody over here? Any comments from the public? Okay, we need two motions here.
Well, I have a question now that I think about it.
Sir.
What time? Does that mean any time during the 24 hours Walmart's open?
Mayor Kuykendall, Councilman Lamerson, yes, that does mean any time within the 24 hours, but Walmart is going to be working this. They hire a company that comes in and runs the samplings, and they set up a display area near where liquor is sold in the store. That's typically it's composed of cases of the beer or the wine that's being sampled, and it's cordoned off. And that way, only people can enter who have shown an ID, and the ID is registered, which is how you can only do it one time a day. So the ID is registered, and then you can have your samples, and you cannot leave with any of the cups or anything like that. So,
Thank you for your thorough explanation. I think the folks in Prescott have a right to know.
of course.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'd move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay. The move to close? Okay.
Passes
Motion made and
unanimously.
seconded. Vote, please.
Passes unanimously.
Now let's move to approve.
Move to approve for liquor license application number 09130038S for a Series 9S sampling license for Walmart Supercenter number 1417 located at 3050 Highway 69.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Vote, please.
Passes unanimously.
Okay. Go open the store. Item B.
Item 3B, approval to establish a street closure fee for events in the downtown business district.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Over the last year and a half or so, city staff has been working with stakeholders on refining the special events process as it pertains to the applications and the whole system in general. As a result of that, we've come before council a number of times, and I just wanted to recap those real quick and present it to you. On October 28th of 2014, we went over the special event application and approval process from top to bottom for use of the city rights-of-way. On March 10th, we came back and talked about policies and procedures regarding administrative changes which were made and recommended some future code changes. Subsequently, we came back on April 14th and adopted those code changes, followed by June 2nd with another discussion of special event timeframes downtown. And finally, on July 7th, we had another discussion of downtown events. Through the process, we've made quite a few improvements to the process. I think we've done a lot of investigation of other communities, not only in Arizona, but all over the United States and how they do it. Obviously, Prescott is a little unique in that we have a very desirable downtown courtyard, which leads to more special events. But we feel like we've gone through this process pretty thoroughly, made a lot of good changes, got a lot of good input from other stakeholders in the community, and here's some of the changes that we made. We've added a special events webpage with event site plans on that and more detailed advanced information for the public. Now that'll be up in January with the rest of our upgrades to our website. We also set the new level types. All of the events in the downtown business district, which we'll talk about today, are all level A events, but we have level A events, which have larger impact, level B events, which are on city facilities, but maybe smaller scale, C events, which are small scale events, and then finally D, which are on private property. Through this process, we have installed and completed the Whiskey Row Bollard project for pedestrian safety for the special events on Montezuma. We've implemented an event boss, which is a staff person who will be able to make sure that the event promoters are following the stipulations laid out in the applications and making sure things are in place. We've reviewed and revised the business signature forms. We're one of the few communities, when we did the research, that really has a thorough process for that the applicant has to go to the businesses, get a yes or a no, and provide them with a site event plan or an event site plan so that people know where the fixtures will be set up. We created a progress checklist for the applicants to make it easier for them to find out where they're at, what they might be missing. We've also been working with PUSD, Prescott Unified School District, to allow the use of Mile High Middle School, the football track area, and we have successfully got the first event there coming up on September 12th. It's called the Thumb Butte Food Truck Festival, so we're looking forward to that. As I indicated earlier, we made some code changes. We've also looked at this as, trying to lay out a 2-year calendar and trying to think ahead. A lot of these events are repeat events, so we want to get them out a year ahead so we can see how other things filter in, again, to mitigate impacts, to the downtown area. Mostly we have a positive impact down there, but if we don't watch how the events stack up, they can have some negative impacts. We revised the special event policy and procedure manual from top to bottom. And as a requirement of forwarding the special event liquor licenses to the state, we now have the contract between the event promoter and the nonprofit as a part of that. So on July 7th, the council meeting on July 7th, the mayor had advised to work with a couple of the council people, Councilman Lozelle and Kuknio, to talk about some other changes we may want to implement, and we subsequently met a few times, and that's what I want to move into right now. One of the things that was talked about on July 7th, and we carried the conversation on to our meetings, was a street closure fee. The objective was to determine a way to offset costs associated with the events that require street closures in the downtown business district. The costs related to event street closures include both hard costs for funding for event oversight through the new event boss, who again assures compliance with the conditions set out in the special event permit, and the opportunity costs such as access to existing businesses and related parking and effects on motorists who must detour around the event. I want to point out that the event promoters are responsible for hiring a qualified contractor to physically close the street and put the barricades up. So when I'm talking about the cost recovery here, I'm not talking about setting barricades. I'm talking about cost recovery for an event boss, cost recovery for the Recreation Services Department, for example, does the rights-of-way cleaning in the downtown area where the landscaped areas are. If you have a special event that closes the street, that typically you're going to have more garbage buildup in there. So some of those kind of costs are what I'm referring to.
Joe, the stages, they pay for the stage also.
That's correct. And so the proposal we came up with through our discussions was to establish that fee for street closures in the downtown business district. And the proposed fee is $100 per street closure per event day. According to a council resolution 2686 that was approved in April of 1994, the setting of fees is delegated to the city manager if the fees are not otherwise adopted by council resolution or set forth in city code or otherwise required by law. So it is recommended that this fee be established administratively in order to provide flexibility to adjust that fee as necessary in the future. So that was one of the things that we talked about. And the other thing we talked about, and has been talked about numerous times at council meetings and otherwise, was curfews for events downtown. And the objective was to discuss a policy decision regarding the feasibility and the impacts of implementing an event curfew that would establish allowable event timeframes for events that require street closures. The proposal that we bring forward today was that after a lengthy discussion and further consideration of the comments received at the July 7th, 2015 workshop from a number of area businesses regarding the value of events and the adverse impacts a curfew would have on a number of established events, the group is not recommending the establishment of an event curfew at this time. I wanted to back up just 1 minute to the street closure fee just to say that if this fee had been established for this current year, it would have collected about $3,000. So with that, and this is when we're referring to the downtown business district, this is the downtown business district that is laid out in the city documents. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you, Mayor. Joe, I just would like to say thank you for months of putting a lot of work into this. This has been a back and forth, sometimes heated issue. And I think after everything was done with Chris and I and you, that we've come to a good compromise here. This is kind of the epitome of good governance, good legislation, and taking in all the facts, all the stakeholders, listening to everybody. Not everybody's going to be happy, but most of the people will. And I think in the end, this has turned out good.
Thanks, Mayor. Joe, can you tell us what kind of circumstances would justify some flexibility in adjusting the fee?
Councilman Wilcox, are you referring to the street closure fee?
Yes.
I would say that just like any of the events that are put on in Prescott, they have the ability to apply for grants through the tourism department, through the bed tax grants. Some of those costs, depending upon what the event are, could be offset if they were successful in a grant application. That's sort of what the city went to in about 2010, right in there, was whereas before the city was putting out a lot of effort to, time and effort to set up street closures and do other things for events. At the time, it was felt that cost in the burden of the labor with the downturn in the economy and the reduction of city personnel was too burdensome, and so this grant process was put into place to help offset some of those costs. So they have that opportunity.
Well, you're proposing a fee of $100 per street closure, but you want it adopted administratively, so there's flexibility to adjust the fee, and I'm not understanding why there would need to be an adjustment.
Okay,
or down.
I get it now. That would be just in the future if we found that all of a sudden the costs that were associated with that street closure, whether it was an extra service that we needed to provide to make sure that the events were in compliance or whatever that might be, that there would be the flexibility to raise that if it was required. The idea is certainly not to do anything except cost recover some of the city services that are still currently being provided.
Okay.
Yeah, Mayor, thank you. And when we talk about cost recovery, I think everyone's sitting here saying $100 ain't going to do it, and we understand that too. The thought was, with the addition of the event boss, which is a huge step forward in these events to get streets open on time, have a go-to person, there is increased cost, but really what we're counting on and making up the money that might be spent on this is through the sales tax. And as we saw through the Whiskey Off-Road presentation, that's a pretty hefty sum. So is this $100 intended to cover all our costs? No, it won't do that, but it'll help out with the event boss that we had the addition to, but we're still relying on the sales tax to help cover anything the city incurs.
Jim?
Thanks. So the street closure fee only refers to special events? Not necessarily street closure when you close it down all day for the parade, or you close it all day for this parade, or you do this, or this, where you close the streets and people can't get the parking and stuff in front of the merchants, etc. All this is for the nonprofits that come downtown and use the area. What's the deal, Joe?
Well, Councilman Lamerson, first off, the parades we consider a moving closure. These are hard closures that we're talking about, and they're not all nonprofit events. I would say the majority of them are, but certainly it's not based on anything having to do with the nonprofits. A good percentage of them are nonprofit events, but not all of them.
You mean like the auto clubs and the motorcycle guys and all that? Is that what you're
Correct. Some of the auto clubs do have a charity benefit to them, and some don't. I think off the top of my head, the British Euro Tour does not have a nonprofit associated with it, whereas the Vet Set, I believe, does have firefighters charity. So it's irrespective of nonprofit or for-profit events. It's more due to the hard closures, and again, the parades, we consider the parades more of a moving closure.
Okay. I understand what you're saying. I'm just not sure whether I like it, And so, I just don't, when you close the streets, you close the streets, and that affects everybody locally. And it almost seems to me like you got a public street that we're willing to subsidize somebody's special event to be there in the name of either a charity or in the name of the common good for the community, etc. I'm just wondering what regard's been given to the people that actually have businesses on those streets with regards to whether or not they actually agree with the street closures.
Well, we did discuss this on July 7th. I don't remember any public comments specifically on the street closure fee, but we have discussed it prior to.
And the event boss will be carrying around 10% discount coupons for Lamerson's jewelry, so it should be okay.
Joe, we had a question.
Yeah, but do we have somebody directing them there? What was that last one we just had?
Y'all done?
Yes, sir.
Had a question today from a representative of one of the organizations that use the downtown. And he emphasized that they already pay for all of the, I think he was under the impression the $100 was to take care of the barricades and all those things. And this is in addition to, am I correct on that?
That's correct, and none of the events I can think of are being provided with barricades, and nor have they been for a number of years.
Now, the event boss, are they going to be down during the entire day?
No, right now the way we've got, and we've done it, I think we've done it 3 or 4 times right now, and it's sort of, in a test stage yet, but typically I want them down there, and more often than not it's going to be me, but want them down there first thing in the morning when the event's getting set up to make sure we've got no issues with the bollards or whatever there is, pop back in the afternoon, pop back in later, write a report and get it filed so we can, again, I think one of the benefits of that is not only being there during the event and seeing how it progresses, but also learning if there's some things that could be done better that'll come out through the reporting.
Yeah, but during the day they'd be available by telephone.
They'd be available by telephone, yes.
I think that's the important thing. Okay. Anything further here? Comments from the public? Kendall, I see you in attendance. Thanks for being here. Any comments on this?
Actually, it seems fair. I mean, it's the only thing I wonder about is you've got some really small events that take the street for a very short period of time, the Skull Valley Loop Challenge or something like that, and they pay us. Then I assume they'll be paying this fee.
That's correct.
Right, and then you got the bike race that closes streets down, the same streets down for multiple days and multiple streets. So at some point it might be worthwhile addressing, where, how you want to structure that for different sized events. But having the event boss is key to it. I think you'll find that makes things run much better. It's a great idea.
Yep.
Okay, so we understand the $100 is set by us, but then we delegate the city manager to administer it.
Well, you have a couple of options, Mayor and Council. One, the council can set the fee. However, if the council sets the fee without then delegating the ability to the manager to change the fee, you'd have to come back to the council to reset the fee. Let's say you wanted to raise it to $150 or something, you'd have to go back to council. The other option is the council can delegate the setting of the fee to the city manager. And beyond that, could also set a range, not less than 100, not more than 300, or something like that. So you have sort of those 3 options. 1, council sets. 2, delegate all the authority to the manager, or delegate the authority but set parameters.
Okay. Craig, what works for you?
If it's going to be delegated, Mayor, I would suggest that the city council delegate the city manager to set the fee and adjust the fee with the understanding in the real world, if it's not working, number 1, we're going to hear about it, but number 2, I think based upon the comments today that there's a little bit more to it than just setting the fee. We need to really work up an administrative procedure, not lengthy, but including such things as applicability. What's it applicable to? Is it all street closures? Is it some street closures? But be very specific, because we have parades which are moving. That was a different kind today, and so forth. The distinction was made of hard closures. There needs to be, some sense of what this fee is for and so forth. So I'm certainly willing to go into it with a mindset that the discussion is around $100 or something like that. And if the council would like to delegate that, I will set a fee about that, but certainly there's a little bit more work to refining this before we implement it.
Well, do we need to do that work before we set the, okay. Greg, you want to make the motion as you understand it? You or Chris?
Go ahead. Okay. Move to delegate the city manager the authority to establish a street closure fee for events in the downtown business district.
Second.
Motion made, second. Vote, please.
Passes unanimously.
Now is the time we lobby for the fee to be maybe $1,500 instead of $1.
Item 3C, adoption of resolution number 4306-1515, approving fiscal year 2016 transient occupancy bed tax allocations.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. The item before you this afternoon is the annual allocation of the transient occupancy, or better known as bed tax budget. As you all know, a 3% bed tax is collected by lodging establishments in the city of Prescott, with funding specified for tourism promotion and recreation development in the ballot language. The Tourism Advisory Council, or TAC, does work with the staff to develop this budget and reviews and provides recommendations on event funding. This year's applications were received from 14 organizations for a total of $40,000, not including the Whiskey Off-Road contract, which comes up to a total of $70,000. New for fiscal year 2016 is a transfer of $70,000 in liquor license revenues from the general fund to bed tax, and the transfer of the remaining $142,400 of tourism salary and overhead expenses from the general fund to the bed tax. There are no longer any tourism expenses remaining in the general fund. A couple other things that are a little bit different, or something you're probably going to have a question about, is, as has been the practice in prior years, the total projected available revenue in the fund has been budgeted, resulting in a contingency fee or contingency item, which is available for strategic opportunities should they arise during the fiscal year. There's also, you'll probably notice that the document on the screen it differs slightly from the document in your packet. It was cleaned up slightly, and some estimated numbers that we were working with originally were changed by finance director to reflect actual numbers. So it is cleaned up a little bit. I think it's a little bit easier to read, and there are very, very slight differences between the two documents. But with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I guess I have one. To saw me on the square was 0 across the board, 13, 14, 15. What happened in 16 to award them $3,100?
Well, the event simply didn't take place for several years. So this was the first year that we received an application from Tsunami since the event ended a few years ago.
That's where I was heading on my question, too.
Yeah. The event didn't take place for several years.
Okay. Are you done, Steve?
No, go ahead.
I guess my question is, I've heard things anecdotally and from other people that was part of that organization, and you have, they're back. Okay, why'd they go out? And are we going to throw in $3,100, and is it money well spent? Personally, and I'll just come out and say it, I'd rather to see $3,100 more go to the what is that? The line for the sports. To bring in the softball tournaments and everything, the athletic tournament promotion. I think our bigger bang in the buck in return is the athletic tournament other than Tsunami. They don't have a track record yet.
Well, the previous executive director did resign, and so yes, it was suspended for a while. I should note that all of these applications were reviewed by the Tourism Advisory Committee. All of them were debated, all of them were scored, and this is what we came up with. So it wasn't me determining, where this money goes. It was a process that involved 9 different committee members.
So it was something that I would assume that was looked at then. I mean, I don't know if this is similar to the application process on the community block development grants, that you look it over and you see the viability of it. Were they asking for $3,100, or is that what the committee decided to give them?
That was what the committee decided to give them. They had asked for $5,000.
Okay.
A couple questions or comments. 4th of July celebration, you have down, will be funded from the general fund. And depending on the outcome of the election tonight, we may have to cut the 4th of July, unless we could take it from the contingency fund. Is that the kind of strategic opportunity you're talking about?
Well, it's not exactly what I had in mind, but well, as far as the 4th of July event, I mean, we had put a number in previous years, so that's why that line item is still there. But it's my understanding, and it's no longer my direct responsibility, but it is my understanding that that event is self-supporting and basically pays for itself. So whether we take the money out of general fund or out of bed tax, we get the money back.
Okay. So why is there such a large contingency? Why didn't we allocate more money to some of these other requesters who asked for money?
Well, we had determined ahead of time that the maximum that we would award for event support was $70,000 total. So we worked with that number. So we take the $70,000, subtract out Whiskey Off-Road, and that was the number that was left. And then that was based upon the applications that were received. But as you can see, every year there has been projected beginning cash balance. So we've rolled over unused funds from year to year, which gives us this, $942,493 amount, not expecting to be able to spend it all, but in order to have the budget authority, should something come up that we think is a strategic opportunity that we need to be involved in. So it's available, but it's not broken out.
I'm sorry, I can't resist answering this question. I think the other important thing to note here is that when you look at the top line, the projected beginning cash balance, that's not ongoing revenue. That's accumulated revenue that we don't necessarily ever get again if we spend it. So it's really something that's available for one-time types of expenditures, and so kind of increasing that expectation for the grant authority kind of sends the expectation to all the different events that apply that there's going to be more available, and that wouldn't be true forever, because that's not ongoing revenue that we have. It's built up revenue from prior years that wasn't spent.
Okay, thanks for that explanation. Good.
And one thing, Don, if I think I'm right, this year 4th of July was so successful they ran out of wristbands to sell, didn't they?
I think I heard something along that.
And they were actually writing on people's wrists to get it done. And I think the contingency, it rolls over and it just kind of gives us that buffer in case we're presented these opportunities. And I think one of that we used the contingency on was Best Fest, wasn't it? When it came to town. And all of a sudden you have this big festival that's coming, and that brought 70,000 people to town, I believe it was.
Well, and the other thing that we have to plan for is what happens if the economy tanks and all of a sudden bed tax revenues drop significantly, right, and we have contracted obligations. So it's always good to have a buffer there.
And I think the council would be good to hear what kind of people are on this TAC that make this recommendation.
Well, the TAC is comprised of 9 individuals. 8 of them represent stakeholder groups, such as the Chamber of Commerce, Prescott Downtown Partnership, the Lodging Association, PI, the Prescott Area Independents, Restaurants and Bars, and the museums. Those organizations select their own delegate to the Tourism Advisory Committee. There is one at-large member from the hospitality industry in Prescott, so that's the makeup of the TAC.
And it's a very qualified group to make decisions. These people know how to get people to town. We know what makes them stay in town. So when they give us these recommendations, it's stuff that's already worked. And the only thing I worry about is when some of these I see this more as like seed money, and more we're turning into like an ongoing subsidy for the events. I'd like to see them eventually get to the place where they stand on their own.
And that's something that's been discussed by the TAC. What would be the highest and best use of the $70,000? Is it continuing to provide support to these events, or is it to create some new ones? The TAC is concerned about our mission, which is to increase revenue during off-season, the off-season and during midweek, which is an issue. Every Friday and Saturday night through the summer months, we're pretty much sold out. So there isn't much room for growth there. So should we, take this money and spend it on something that'll have an impact in the middle of the winter, in the middle of the week? And those are things that we're looking at and may make changes to in coming years.
Thank you.
Steve?
Just another explanation in budget year 16. Under tourism, 13, 14, 15 don't show a dollar amount, and in 16 it shows 143,360.
That was a transfer of, prior to this fiscal year, there was salary and overhead that was still in general fund. So that's transferring that money out of general fund and applying it to bed tax.
So is that your salary?
That's salary, and that's overhead charged by other departments to us for overhead expenses.
But does that include your salary?
It does include my salary, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
I have one more question, Mayor, and I have to ask it. I have to. No, I have to. Don, I see that there's a open space management of $10,000. What is that $10,000 for?
I'm not the person to answer that. I'll let you do that.
That is money that's allocated for maintenance of open space. We use it for trail improvements in open space or whatever that money might need to be used for, fencing, those types of things.
The DG that like the over the hill gang will order to put down, things like that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Anything else? Gene? Nothing? Don, are you through?
I am.
You all done? Any comments from the audience? Okay, need a motion.
Move to adopt resolution number 4306-1515.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Vote, please.
Passes unanimously.
Okay. Go to D.
Item D, approval of payment in the amount of $116,818.26 to the Arizona Department of Revenue and authorization of the Finance Director to enter into a memorandum of understanding establishing performance measures for state collection of privilege tax.
Thank you, Dana. Mayor and Council, you'll remember during the, hold on. Get this done. During the budget process, we talked about House Bill 2617, which was a new bill this year, where the legislature decided, since the Department of Revenue collects revenues for the city of Prescott, including coming up our sales tax, in addition all the other things, that it was appropriate for the local cities across the state and the counties and the transportation authorities all to pay some of those costs associated with that. Those costs were separated into the categories of the county, the city, and the transportation authorities. And as you can see, of the $20 million that was assessed, about $7 million comes from the counties, $3 million from the two large transportation authorities, the Maricopa and the Pima, and then $10,912,000 will be coming from the cities, and that is distributed based on population. That is the 86,537 that is on our bill that we received from the Department of Revenue a few weeks ago. And in addition, the House bill also assessed a 76-cent per citizen one-time fee to the non-program cities, which Prescott is one of the 15 non-program cities that collect their own sales tax currently, and will be going to state collection per the House bill that passed a few years ago. This is a one-time fee to help Department of Revenue with the programming changes to their tax system. And again, as we talked during the budget process,
it's not a great situation. It's not a situation that we can really do much with. The state has assessed the fees as opposed to reducing our share of state shared revenue, which was a minor victory in that we keep the percentages established of our state shared revenue and separate this fee each year as a fee associated with a service. And in relation to that, there is an IGA with some benchmarks and performance measures that the league has negotiated with Department of Revenue, which is also part of this item to authorize me to work with the Department of Revenue in implementing that IGA for the city of Prescott. With that, I would be glad to answer any questions, keeping in mind that I'm not the state legislature who adopted this fee.
I think you got some coming, Charlie.
Mark, my bluntness is not directed at you.
Yes.
No. This comes back to, and the memo states it, that this is paying our portion of the mandated centralized administration and collection services. Question for legal counsel. Has any chartered city challenged House Bill 2617 or 2111?
Not that I'm aware of.
You know, this has had a bad taste in all of our mouths since the beginning of time. I think there's a question as to whether or not the system is actually going to be ready even this coming year. So we're going to be throwing money at a system the state hasn't potentially set up. And I'm sorry, but I'd rather table this instead of vote it down and put us in a bad spot. But I just can't support paying this right now. I have some problems with this.
Tabling it and seeing if the attorney sees any viability of possibly a lawsuit being there at all.
Yeah, because I understand why the state tried to do this, but in all honesty, it was for big box stores to help them, and it leaves the small businesses that comprise a majority of Prescott in a really bad position. You'll no longer be able to walk to the window in the city of Prescott with a tax question. You'll call a 1-800 number in Phoenix and maybe get somebody. And if you look historically at it, I think we've provided great service at a cost that makes sense for us. And this just sits really poorly with me. And I know, Mark, you have put a lot of work into complying with the state's requirements and working with the league and all of these different aspects, but this one just doesn't sit well.
And I definitely appreciate that opinion, Councilman. However, as the state law is written, if we do not pay it, they will reduce our state shared revenues by the end of September.
So we only have to the end of September to pay them.
Right. Otherwise, they'll take it from our state shared revenues.
That's nice of them.
Council, how long before you would think that we'd know anything? Like, is it viable?
Well, you know, in discussions I've had with other city attorneys on this and with the league, you know, my impression is there's really no move afoot to challenge this law. No, you know, there have been a number of discussions challenging various laws ranging from sign walkers to, you know, the political sign and those kinds of things. The biggest problem with challenging this right up front is that the state legislature essentially authorized cities to collect sales tax. In other words, cities don't have any inherent authority to collect sales tax other than the state legislation. So cities being sort of creatures of the state or the state legislature, I don't, you know, and this is just sort of shooting from the hip a little bit, but there really doesn't appear any discussion on any type of, you know, group or collective challenge to this by the non-program. Obviously, the program cities all submit or have their taxes collected by the DOR. So it's a relatively small group of cities. How many?
About 15.
15 out of 90, roughly, that have historically collected their own municipal sales tax. So it really would be a question of whether there'd be a group effort or whether one city would go out sort of and try and challenge it. Now, even if there was some sort of challenge, the amount, you know, it goes without saying that it would take years and years to resolve in any kind of litigation. So That being said, even if there was a challenge, a lawsuit filed, for instance, it's certainly not going to get resolved by the end of September. Maybe September 2020, but not September 2015.
And I understand that, the legislature passed the law against the objections of a lot of municipalities. But let me just paint the picture for you in 2 years, like they've done to the school districts. Oh, we have a budget shortfall. We're not going to distribute your money because they control it all. And we're going to roll it over to the next fiscal year because those are the budget tricks they've used before. So, if we're obligated to pay it, then we took an oath to support the state constitution and laws, and I guess we'll have to vote for it. But I'm not happy. I haven't been happy with the state about this since they started talking about it.
At the league conference last week, I went to the session on TPT, which is very interesting. And there have been some progress made in the last legislative session to clarify some things. And then John and I were at a session for attorneys talking about this MOU. Nobody likes having to pay it, but we don't have a choice. It is mandated by the legislature. And if we don't pay it, like you said, Mark, we don't get our money. We don't get our share. And we also learned of another situation in which the city of Yuma was disputing an indemnity clause imposed by the Department of Transportation, and they could possibly lose $4.5 million on a street project because they're not willing to sign an agreement imposed on them by ADOT. Now, we can fight some of these things, but this is not a fight I think we want to spend time and money on because we need to get our tax money back here working for the citizens of Prescott.
Well, you may not want to fight it, but I would at least, at the very minimum, ask our city attorney to ask for a ruling from our state attorney general, Mr. Voronovich, when you start talking about the election law being challenged because of us being a chartered community. This falls in the same face of that we have the right for, as a city, based upon our Constitution and being elected by the public, to set some of our own laws. My problem that I have is the legislature passes those laws throughout the state in a broad brush without looking at or asking for a legal decision by the Attorney General to say, are we enacting a law in the face of a chartered community? Now, we've won that just recently with the elections. So I would at least, at the very minimum, ask the question, because I think we're crazy if we don't. This keeps happening over and over and over again. This next legislative year, what new law are they going to come up and say, you, the city of Prescott, have to do it? And then we sit here and say, oh, yeah, it's the law. I guess we really need to do it.
I didn't say it that way.
See, but the point is okay, I understand we have to collect these things, but on the other hand, we can say we have the money, but until you address it with an illegal opinion by the state of Arizona's Attorney General, why do we as a chartered community just keep rolling underneath the bus and saying, oh, well, I don't think it's righteous?
Well, if we want an AG's opinion on this, unfortunately, the AG can only issue opinions to certain requests, and a city or a city attorney is not one of those that can request an AG opinion. So, however, an elected state official, a state representative or state senator, is one who can request an AG opinion on something. So that's certainly an option, but my recommendation, we would go through one of our electeds, our state elected officials up here, and ask one of them to ask for the opinion. That's because the AG will simply reject you or myself or as someone who can ask for an AG opinion. So the AG won't issue opinions to other than school boards and state elected officials. The AG won't issue an opinion. So we can certainly go that route, but just so you know, that's the route we'd have to go through one of our elected state officials.
I think we need to do that. I think there needs to be clarity because, this keeps happening over and over again, and as we've all said, this whole thing can be swept again and us not getting any money. Well, and how do we keep from that happening?
That was going to be my question, Mayor. Mark or Allison or anybody else want to stand up? Under this law, because it was one of the few laws that I really sat down and really read and understood. But could they do what they did for her or these other things like the school district? Is there anything in the law, or does the law prevent them from sweeping these?
Councilman, it doesn't specifically prevent them from sweeping it, but Proposition 108, which was passed when the state shared revenue formulas were created for cities and towns for income tax, for state shared revenue of sales tax, for highway user revenue fees, specifically requires a supermajority vote, a 3/4 vote of the legislature in order to change the state shared revenue system. So I don't know, ever in history in the state of Arizona, they haven't really been able to get that on something like this, because if they change the state shared revenue system, which then requires cities and towns to increase their own taxes, it also counts as a tax increase on their voting record. So could they? Yes. Is that likely?
But it would take a majority of the House and Senate.
It requires, yes, a majority.
A two-thirds majority.
Two-third majority of both. And so we've been able to prevent that in the past, and it's a Prop 108 case, essentially, if they change the state shared revenue. The way that they were able to change HERF is that the way that law is written, it talks about there is funding from highway user revenue fees that pays for DPS. So they're sweeping that revenue for DPS, which is an allowable expense from highway user revenue fees. So they had a little tiny window in order to sweep highway user revenue fees. They do not have that window for state shared revenue in income tax and sales tax and the vehicle license tax. So it would be difficult.
Okay.
However, I have worked for a city that is a program city, and when the state was having problems during the recession, there were definite concerns that they would not distribute the state shared revenue in a timely manner. But again, that would be a Prop 108 case, and I can't imagine that the league would not take that on.
Okay, thank you. I did notice one thing, though, and I'm with Charlie. It is a hard pill to swallow, and for the sake of not breaking the law and violating the state constitution, I'll be forced to, wait a minute. There is not a thing there that says City of Prescott. It just says Craig McConnell.
There goes your bonus.
Mayor, we can pay this bill today and still challenge it, and I think we should challenge it. To me, it's like me charging a waitress to counter tips. It just doesn't feel right.
I have one last question.
Go.
In our rearrangement, Mark, of our own tax folks that we had in the city of Prescott, our wonderful tax folks, where if you had a question as an independent business person, you could walk to City Hall and stick your head at the window and say, I have questions. How many people have we reorganized due to the fact that the tax burden is now shifted to the state?
Well, it hasn't shifted yet. That's in progress. We're in the middle of the match and merge, is what they call it, where we try to line up our business accounts with the state's accounts. Right now, it's scheduled to change January 1. Where will we be a year from now if they do start collecting as far as positions? There is still going to be a real need to verify that the state is getting everybody locally licensed. There still is the ability of us to be able to do local audits and also to assist in joint audits. There's still, with the new IGA, and again, we've been working, again, 2 years with the state on this implementation, where we will be able to provide some level of assistance at our counter now, which at the beginning, it was, no, you can't provide any. We're working through all these things. I'm not, able to stand up here and say, are we going to be able to get rid of the sales tax entry clerk? Because we're still going to need to canvass our businesses and make sure that they're getting licensed with the state. We're still going to need to review the data that comes from the state and make sure that all the businesses are paying their sales tax.
That was the point I was trying to get at. In looking at these numbers, we haven't saved anything by losing employees. What it's doing is it's costing us more money by going this direction.
The intent of the law obviously was considered convenience for businesses, not a cost saving for communities, and I really don't think we're going to see very much cost savings.
Mark, I got the feeling at the league that there's a real question of whether the state is going to be in a position to put this in effect. Normally, any type of an understanding, both sides give and take. We're giving at this point. What is the performance requirement of the state on the other side to do for us in return for this payment?
And again, the House Bill 2617 is recovery of the cost of Department of Revenue for all the services they provide cities, counties, and transportation authorities, which includes local tax collections, but is also state share tax collections.
Which they haven't done yet.
Well, they are doing the state share. You know, we get our share of the TPT, the state transaction privilege tax. We get our share of the income tax and so forth. Those were all considered in the House Bill 2617. It wasn't just for collection of local taxes. So there is the IGA that does have some performance measures on their responses. As you said, we've obviously been working weekly with the Department of Revenue and the League as we try to implement this, the previous House bill for the centralized administration. We're supposed to have a go or no-go decision later in September. You know, meetings as of last week that I was involved in, it seems like the Department of Revenue and the Governor's Office are leaning more towards, you know, they're going to be able to make that deadline. I don't know what will actually happen, obviously.
Yeah.
But, you know, by the middle of September, we should have a better idea. October, the state supposedly will be sending out renewal notices to our businesses on our behalf if they are going to go. So the next 3 months will really, you know, will be very telling.
Yeah. I think there was conversation that we anticipate that there'll probably be a net loss in the collection of sales tax just because of efficiency in many cases. What is that number?
Don't really have any way to put a number to that number. As I said, you know, we're going to do our best with city staff to verify that taxpayers are reporting. You know, we have negotiated information we will get from the Department of Revenue that will allow us to track the reporting. Although we will not be able to call the taxpayer and say, why didn't you report? We can work with the Department of Revenue to get further information and get them to do that.
I've heard the number of 10% kicked around through some of the other communities.
Whatever it would kind of be a guess, I think, but it is foreseeable that there would be some loss.
So we lose revenue and pay to have it collected.
Yes, sir. Correct.
Something's wrong. I don't, you know, I think we have no choice. It's kind of like a lot of things that we end up with a state. But my suggestion, since there's a due date of September 30th, don't send the check till the last day. And if they don't perform and put us off another year, I think there's something to discuss, or it would seem like there would be.
We can definitely hold the payment till the last part of September.
Yeah.
Hooray.
Anyone else? No. Comments from the public? What do we decide on? 3 minutes?
It says 5 here. My name is Daniel Matson. I live on Merritt Street. I agree with Charlie that there's a really bad taste with this, but if I understand from what I've listened to, we either pay this or they're going to take this. We've got no choice. And I mean, what's the use of really arguing with this one? Pick the fights you want to fight. But I think this is going to be a bad outcome anyway. It looks to me like we're paying money for them to do a job we could do much more efficiently and have our money much quicker. It stinks. But what can you do?
Thanks, Dan. Okay, do we have a motion?
Mayor, reluctantly move to approve payment of $116,818.26 to the Arizona Department of Revenue and authorize the finance director to enter into a memorandum of understanding establishing performance measures for privileged tax administration.
Reluctantly second.
Where did you want to put the reluctantly?
In bold letters in the beginning, please.
Okay. Okay, motion made and seconded. Let's vote, please.
Passes unanimously.
Adam E.
Item E, award of city contract number 2016-043 for the Pleasant Street Water and Sewer Main Replacement Project to Capital Improvements LLC in the amount of $320,000.
Thank you. Hello, Mayor, City Council. This item today is for city contract for the Pleasant Street Water and Sewer Main Replacement Project to Capital Improvements. The limits of the project are between Aubrey and Gurley on Pleasant. The engineering design started last October and included water sewer main replacements due to age, condition, and upsizing to meet current standards. And then that portion of Pleasant Street will be, the driving surface will be milled and then repaved as part of the project. The project was publicly bid for 2 consecutive weeks in the paper. There was a mandatory pre-bid meeting on July 13, and 5 bids were received, with Capital Improvements being the low apparent bidder. The engineer's estimate was higher than that bid, but within the range of bids received. We have a verification of the company's license, bonding, references past performance similar projects completed. As part of our normal bid review, we look at the individual line items, and if there's any questions that we have a pre-award conference with the apparent low bidder to discuss those items. In this case, we did, and we met with the contractor, and as a result of that meeting, we deemed the bid responsive and responsible and proceeded to this award meeting. Subsequently, we did receive a bid protest from the third low bid, Asphalt Paving and Supply, identifying concerns with the same items that we had identified. We conducted again a more detailed and thorough review of the bid and determined that the bid was still responsive and responsible. The award of the contract is proposed for today. Pre-construction meeting is next week, with construction beginning after Labor Day and completing before Thanksgiving. The standard form for construction service will be used for this project. The contractor has a 2-year warranty for the workmanship and materials. The design of the project for the driving surface is so we don't have to do any maintenance for up to 7 to 10 years, and the utility system has a service life of over 50 years. Funding is available for the project from the Streets and Open Space Fund, Water Fund, and Wastewater Funds. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Yeah, Mayor, thank you. I've talked a little bit about this with Henry and his staff, and I read the letter from APS, and I think a lot of these concerns are very legitimate concerns. At the minimum, there's confusion on how to bid some of these jobs. As of late, the council has really put its foot down and said that we want to see balanced bids come through, and we're really holding them to quality standards where we're not accepting poor workmanship. I'm confused, but I'm even more concerned that the contractors are confused that bid on this project. And I'd like to just, I'd like to have a little more clarity before we vote on this, but maybe we'll hear more as this discussion goes on. But right now, it sounds like some things are bid low, beyond low, where other companies have bid a much higher price for that. So just a lot more research. I'm just uncomfortable about putting it through today with the concerns that have been brought up by other contractors.
Well, I look at it a couple different ways. You know, whether it's fair or balance is all in the mind of the beholder, I suppose. But as a contractor myself, if I determine I'm going to demolition the blinds and then hang new blinds, but I decide to make the price higher for the demolition and the product and then not charge anything for the installation, then I run into structural concrete. That's my deal. I probably lost money. From my standpoint, when you start looking at the different methods of how to bid one, I find it very difficult to tell a contractor or anybody that bids a job for the city of Prescott, no matter what it is, how they have to bid it. To be fair and equal is really subjective and puts everybody, you can look at the bids on this thing, they weren't fair and equal by anybody's means. If they were fair and equal, there would have only been a couple $1,000s between the bids. So from my standpoint, the city sets standards, instead sets values on certain things that are out there. If they fall within those values based upon the people that we hire, meaning our engineering staff, then I think the fair and reasonable bid, without the contractor having past history of issues, is what we're all about. If the guy wants to make some money and he bids it low and he finds himself blasting in concrete, he shouldn't have a right to come back to us and ask us for money. I think we as a council have rolled over to demands in the past from contractors based upon them trying to make themselves whole, and I don't see this to be the case.
And I can see your point on this particular item, but I look at the next item on the agenda, and it is only $2,000 difference, a little bit more than $2,000 difference on an $837,000 job. So if there is confusion on behalf of the people bidding on this job, that's a big difference. And when you're talking about that, that's keeping employees working, keeping employees at home. That's a big part of your revenue. So that's the thing I'm most concerned about, is that it seems like there is some confusion out there. And with us holding people's feet to the fire as we have as of late, I would hate to do anything that jeopardizes us to going back to where we were before, where we did have confusion with unbalanced bids. And I put in an unbalanced bid myself. It's a great game to play. I don't want to see the games like that go on. I mean, I benefited that. I was bidding against a national company. They didn't know the area. I put in an unbalanced bid, and yes, I was taking a gamble. If I would have had to supply services, which I knew
did you get the bid?
Yes.
God bless America.
And I knew I would have to come up with those services that I bid at a penny, which would cost me $40 every time I did the service. But they soon caught on to that, and I understand it's the big game of that, but I'm concerned about the confusion out there, and I think the gentleman that had the confusion is here, and I'd like to hear those points of view too, and even the contractor that won. And maybe this is just an education for me. Maybe everyone else has it down pat, but that's what I'm concerned about.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question.
Yes.
When this bid went out, how long did the written bid go out before the pre-bid conference, or the pre-bid meeting?
Should have been about 2 weeks.
Okay, so in 2 weeks, I'm just going to use these five. These five received, there might have been more, received the instructions, the bid instructions, had 2 weeks to come up with the questions for the bid meeting that everybody had a chance, and everybody had questions. And I've been to pre-bid meetings with FAN and none of these other ones, but FAN is pretty thorough on their questions, and others. So they had a chance to ask the questions and any confusion, because I've been to pre-bid meetings myself, and that's the time that you get all the confusion out of it.
Yeah, this project is a block of remove and replace the sewer and pavement. They also had, after that pre-bid meeting, they had almost 2 weeks again to
follow-up questions
that we could have answered, and there was no confusion on the project. Contractors routinely take a set of plans, specifications, make determinations in how they're going to approach the project, and bid accordingly. If contractor A has an idea and contractor B has a different idea, that's why we see ranges.
Yep.
And
We
the
got
bids.
anywhere from 13%, which is, you got 20 grand, which is 25 grand, 13%, and then you've got 40% or 40,000 difference of 38, and then another 40, and then so you're looking at $120,000 span.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a different way of looking at different things. And I know that they don't take risks. They don't, they're not going to take a chance. But if you take the top one off, they're all within the 13-14% of each other. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
thank you.
Steve, has this company done work for the city before?
Yes, they have.
Capital improvements?
Capital improvements is done, if I recall, they did one project last year for us with one minor change order within the project for a very small amount. And prior to that, they had done 3 or 4 projects going back to 2010.
Okay.
But not necessarily under the same name.
Some of them were capital, and some were under a minor contracting.
Okay.
Same principle.
That was my puzzle. I don't remember capital improvements of being one of our normal bidders.
Yeah.
But,
They're a normal bidder. We've seen them quite frequently. They did the small water main project, their phase 1, last year, and then they did a number of water line and sewer line projects a couple of years ago, from 2010-ish to 2012-13, somewhere in there.
Okay. You mentioned minor, which I'm very familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
They operate 2 different companies.
Yeah, Mr. Minor has at least 2 companies. One is Capital Improvements, which I understand is more municipal focused, and A Minor Contracting, which has also a B license and does other contracting as well.
I see. Okay. Chris?
Yeah, Mayor, I'm not questioning the integrity of any company that's on the block here. I think some of this stuff has gone so fast. I know that the contractor that was worried about it apparently had a letter dated August 18th asking these questions and received a reply just yesterday on the answers to this. And I don't know if they've been satisfactory to quell the concerns of APS, but that's pretty fast. I mean, to get the answers to your question yesterday, and I understand that it came in late too. I mean, last Tuesday, there was probably more time to get these questions in beforehand. I understand that too, but this is moving pretty quick to just get the answers to your question the day before the meeting. I don't know how much follow-up there is and how much follow-up could happen.
You had a comment about wanting to hear from
Yes, sir.
somebody who was in the audience. Okay. Who are we talking about?
Well, I know Chris from APS is here, and he was the one that sent this letter off, and I just thought there was some pretty good concerns there. I just don't want to see us go backwards on where we've been so far.
Okay.
And the capital improvement person is here too.
Yeah, Alice here too.
Okay. Somebody in the audience that wanted to speak to this. Okay.
Mayor and Council, Chris Graff, 8405 Smitty's, Prescott Valley, representing asphalt paving and supply. We're certainly not up here to disrespect staff's recommendation or to question the integrity of other contractors. I was able to attend a meeting of the council in May of 2014 concerning the Park Avenue improvement job. I felt that Mayor Council sent a pretty strong message that unbalanced bids had no place in Prescott. That was my takeaway from that. There were some other factors involved in that, but now we're looking at this project, and as Mr. Councilman Cunha, there's another one following with some unbalanced items. 3 items that will total approximately $28,000 on the engineer's estimate, and the contractor's saying that he may not use those or may not need them. The refund to the city for that will be a whopping $42. That does not seem like that it meets the definition of a balanced bid. And if I could, I'd like to read to you the definition of unbalanced is a bid containing lump sum or unit price which do not reflect reasonable actual cost plus a reasonable proportion share of the bidder's anticipated profit, overhead cost, and indirect cost. At $42 refund for those 3 items, I don't believe you could think that that is contained within that item. So we're just asking that the city send that same message out they did in May of 14, that the gamemanship and stuff like that's not welcome here. We want a level playing field to bid these jobs on. And that's basically what we're asking.
And Mayor, I just know that we've actually held his company's feet to the fire and denied them the ability to bid on a cement project because we had some outstanding issues with some pavement work that was done. And I just want to be fair as a city council of when we award these things that it is all on a level playing field.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's a question for Steve.
Yes.
When you ask for qualifications of the bidders, do you ask them if they have ever been debarred or suspended, or if they're involved in litigation and what the outcome of that litigation was?
No, yes, and no. We do check the Register of Contractors Board site for the current status of their license. We do check for the debarment site, the U.S., I forgot the exact acronym for it, but there's a site that talks about debarment. We do not have a form that identifies any litigation pending in our bid requirements right now.
Question for City Attorney. In your experience, has the question about litigation been part of other government entities' qualification list?
Mayor and Council, I do know that Prescott has in fact asked on certain projects for any a list of any current litigation or current disputes, and the only thing I can think of is that that may have been tied to a requirement either of FAA grant or a WIFA funding project, because my recollection is that on a sewer or wastewater related project with Joel Berman, there was some information provided that the low bidder had either, I think, no issues or no current claims or litigation against municipalities. But I don't know, I can't tell you that it's a standard practice in every single public works project. I just don't know that. I don't think that's necessarily the case, because the problem is pending or current litigation doesn't necessarily reflect negatively on the contractor. Sometimes there are just disputes that occur for claims, and I will say this to the council: a couple of issues on change orders. Change orders are allowable or approvable only when there's a change of condition that was unforeseeable. So, for instance, when we would do change orders for public works, when Prescott does change orders for public works projects, they're allowed or should be approved only if the condition that requires a change order was unforeseeable by, either by the engineer or basically it couldn't have been predicted. And then the other issue is that our general terms and conditions of the contract require that if there is a dispute about a claim or a monetary amount, the contractor is required to proceed forward and complete the project, regardless of the dispute. And so the city then doesn't have to approve a change order. The contractor is required to proceed forward, complete the project within the time. We do have a liquidated damages clause in all of our contracts. So if there's a delay, subject to certain exceptions, we can charge the contractor liquidated damages. Then after the project's done, the sort of normal course is then you essentially arbitrate over the claims both ways. So, ultimately, the question of whether a bid is unbalanced or not, I don't think it's necessarily a mathematical equation or a hard and fast conclusion. I think there is some sort of professional judgment involved with whether a bid can be deemed unbalanced or not. I mean, we looked at, for instance, the Federal Transportation Authority and their definition, and I think it's included in the response letter of what an unbalanced bid is. There is some subjectivity to it, unfortunately. I mean, it's just sort of impossible to say, when numbers look a certain way, it's unbalanced or it's not. It's not an absolute, it's not necessarily objective. So there is sort of a professional decision-making that is involved in that analysis.
That it? Okay. Anyone else? Thank you, sir.
Mayor, I think there's someone else I'd like to speak to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Come on up. I took my glasses off too soon.
Thank you very much for letting me come in here. I haven't signed in or anything. My name is Alan Miner. I'm the president of A Miner Contracting as well as the president of Capital Improvements. I developed Capital Improvements to actually be the construction company in a long term, and then A Miner Contracting will be the equipment company. It's something I've been dealing with for many, many years, to where it's a tax advantage and it's also advantages of a lot of other things. There was a huge tax consequence to be able to take the equipment out of A Miner, several $1 million worth, and move it into another LLC. So finally I gave up the A Miner thing and said, okay, let A Miner keep the equipment. We'll just have another company do the construction work and it'll lease back from A Miner. And that's been the plan since the mid-'80s. I've been in business under A Miner Contracting since 1980. I started my business in 1977.
Yeah, well, I think we're all familiar with with Miner. So, I was not familiar with Capital Improvements.
Well, anyway, I'd like to start off by saying that there's no imbalance to either this bid or the Montezuma bid if we're talking about the Pleasant Street. And I'd like to explain that, just in short, some companies are better at some things than other things on the actual project itself. When it comes to the underground, specific to the Pleasant Street project, this is the first time we've gotten a glimpse in a long time, not the first time, but in a long time, we've gotten a glimpse of what underground looks like without slurry. And it gets pretty low. And I've been having this campaign for many, many years with the city to show them that they're saving a lot of money whenever you don't use slurry, and this is a classic example of that. And so, yes, the prices are low, but it reflects what you're really doing out there, and it reflects what we're really good at, and we've been doing it for a very, very long time, 37 years, in fact. So there's no imbalance to those line items, particularly when you're looking at underground with no slurry. It's really a real story to be taken further. And there should be a discussion sometime in the future, and I'd be very happy to be involved in what can be done to eliminate more slurry in our projects going further, going down the road, going forward from here. It's a good case here with the Pleasant. The other line items that were mentioned, whenever you want to raise a complaint about an imbalanced bid, you've got to have certain blocks in place. The criteria for an imbalanced bid would have to be that, number one, you've got to be talking about major line items. None of the line items discussed here that I've read in APS's complaint fit the major line items in accordance with 109.9 of the MAG. They're well below it. So you're talking about minor line items for which don't apply to the rules governing an imbalanced bid. They become irrelevant. So with that, I just don't see where there's an argument. Other things is that when it comes to underground, there are wide swings. You know, I've seen 200% and 300% swings when it comes to underground. Everybody looks at it differently. Everybody has certain expertise. Everybody has certain methods when it comes to underground. It seems to iron out when it comes to surface work, whenever you're talking about paving. But when it comes to underground, it's a real wild market. It has huge swings. And then, of course, there's the one line item that everybody points at, which was pointed out at the Park Avenue with Connor Moody, which is as old as this argument has ever been, and that's with the rock line item. The rock line item, I've explained on a number of occasions, doesn't work when you have rock, and it doesn't work when you don't have rock. It's being looked at by the city. It has been looked at a number of times in the past as maybe trying to do something different with that, make it a lump sum or whatever. But whenever you do have rock and you put a number in there, it's never going to be enough, even if it's $500 a linear foot. The common price for it is anywhere from $35 to $50 a cubic yard or a linear foot, and it depends on how the inspector measures it, but it's never enough. Now, when you don't have rock, you just simply don't put money in there anticipating that you're going to have it. If you do end up encountering rock, it's very much like Steve Blair would say, you're just going to have to eat it. That line item just doesn't work the way it stands, and that is the exception to everything I'm talking about here. And everybody knows it. All the bidders in Prescott have always put a dime or a penny on it to become somewhat responsive so that they don't get accused of being non-responsive by putting a zero on it. But that line item just doesn't work for anybody, and everybody does the same thing. So there is one exception there, and that's it. The rest of the line items we're talking about are expertise, and there's such a thing also if you're going high with a line item, that either you've had a bad experience with that particular item in the past and you need more money for it because maybe you're not really as good as the others on that. There's always that. Again, we're not talking about any major line items here. So, you know, any of these line items go up, they're not going to go up significantly. We're talking about minor line items. And so the major line items are very well spelled out in MAG 109.9. And before you start talking about any line item being imbalanced, you have to meet that criteria first. So that's all I have for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Al. Any questions of Al Hawley?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So do you think we need to fix our request for bid process that we have with this? Because I know that concern with rock came up with CLM as well. What do we need to change in order to get a more accurate bid that way?
Well, specific to just the rock line item, I think that in the past in other cities, such as Flagstaff, for example, I've done a lot of work up there, they don't ever use that line item. They just say, okay, everything's included in your pipeline item, whether it be water or sewer or storm drain or whatever. If you encounter rock, we expect you to get that pipeline done. They just don't have that line item at all. And it just works. In the specifications, when you look up the sewer or the water or whatever pipeline you happen to be putting in Flagstaff, you'll see that that includes rock. Okay? So there is no rock line item. Wherever you have a rock line item, you're opening up Pandora's box there. So again, I would suggest that if you really feel compelled to have it, you would put it as a lump sum instead of a cubic yard or a linear foot price, because it's so variable. The way it reads now is that when you don't start measuring that rock until you get down to that rock. And so if you've got a 5-foot deep trench and you don't start hitting rock until the 4th foot, your inspector will come along and measure that bottom foot of rock. And then if you only had 10 feet of it, you'd be lucky to get 1 cubic yard, and he's going to hand you $35, and you're going to be paying your blaster $10,000. You know, it just doesn't work. So, it's a matter of just the logistics of it. It's just the mere matter of the logistics when it comes down to how rock is actually encountered and paid for and how much it costs. And it's like buying a quart of milk by the pound. It just doesn't work. So, so I suggest that you include it in your line items and eliminate the line item completely. Other municipalities have done that. It has worked very well. And if you feel compelled to have it, I would put it as a lump sum. In effect, that's the same thing. So.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor? Following on to that comment, Public Works has also identified that as a item of conversation, and as part of our technical specification update that we're working on right now, we are evaluating other ways of addressing that rock removal item, similar to what Mr. Minor was describing. So we know that there's an issue of concern, and we are looking at that in addition to other modifications to our technical specifications to tighten up our specifications so there's less questions and a better product and a better price for the city.
Did this rock line item, would that have made a difference in who won this bid or on the following item as well? The following agenda item?
It depends on what the contractor had bid. And there's a wide range from pennies to $50 for that item.
Craig, my question to you. The recommendation on this, on item E, is to award the city contract. Is that stand?
That's correct.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Before we go there, I've been gone on vacation, but I asked very clearly today of staff about the meeting with the contractor and about whether it had been vetted through the legal department. And I was assured, based upon me not being a professional in that field, that not only had Mr. Palladini looked at it, but engineering had looked at it,
yes,
and it was approved to be the lowest clarified bidder. So from my standpoint, I think that's what you have to look at.
But it just looks like a lot of conversation went on yesterday.
You still have an opinion of your staff that you rely on that is a qualified bid.
Okay.
Regardless of when it was done.
Is there a motion to move this forward?
Mayor, I move to award city contract number 2016-043 for the Pleasant Street Water and Sewer Main Replacement Project to Capital Improvements, LLC, in the amount of $320,000.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Let's vote, please.
Passes 6-1. Mayor Pro Tem Kuknio dissenting.
Okay. Item F.
Item F, award of city contract number 2016-026 for North Montezuma Street pavement and utility improvements project to Capital Improvements LLC in the amount of $837,961.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of council, this is a item toward city contract to perform pavement rehabilitation and utility improvements along North Montezuma between Gurley Street and Sheldon Street. In January 2014, the initial design contract was awarded and design began. As we got into the design, we realized that we needed to extend the project for some additional utility improvements that were identified. So that's why it took a little longer to get this project out to bid. The bids were publicly noticed again for 2 weeks, and a pre-bid meeting was held on July 15th of this year. 5 bids were received on July 23rd. Capital Improvements was the apparent low bidder. The engineer's estimate was third in this case. All the confirmations and verifications of capital improvements have been verified, and the bid has been reviewed, and a pre-award conference was held with capital improvements, again discussing various items of interest, high items, low items, and it was a determination that the bid was responsive and responsible, And again, the Asphalt Paving and Supply did submit a bid protest on the 18th, identifying similar items that we had identified previously. We prepared a response to that, and the additional review resulted in the same result as we had before, that it was responsive and responsible bid. The project is scheduled to be done at night, as we discussed a few weeks ago. The award of contract is scheduled for today, pending your approval. Pre-construction meeting will occur next week. Notice to proceed will be in the week of September 8th, just after Labor Day, and the project is scheduled for completion prior to Thanksgiving. The normal construction services contract will be used for this project. Similar warranties for 2 years from the contractor for materials and workmanship. The pavement is designed for minimal maintenance for 7 to 10 years, and the sewer and water infrastructure has a typical service life of over 50 years. Funds are available from the Streets and Open Space, water and wastewater funds that have been programmed for this fiscal year. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Steve.
Mayor, thank you. Again, Steve, asking the question.
Yes.
You know, it was first the attitude of the council over the past many years that some of our bids were way out of scope and a lot of change orders and those kind of things. At the time it was asked that those be tightened up.
Yes.
You know, this is coming from you guys, not from me, that the fair and balanced bidding and, you know, doing the different things that bidders do, you have deemed this to be a responsible bid, and I assume that you've taken that to the attorney as well and been looked at. So from your perspective and the city attorney's perspective, it's a valid bid. The only question that I would have is that, knowing that both of these contracts, the past one that was just approved and this contract, are both scheduled to start and complete at the same time, one being done at night, one during the day, is there an issue with the contractor of being able to perform both daytime and nighttime work and getting them done under completion times?
Capital Improvements has had a track record of meeting their schedules. There has been no conversation with Capital indicating that they could not complete the projects at the same time. It's the company principal is aware and very active in both of these projects, and he has indicated that the work can get done.
Thank you very much.
Gene.
Steve, when you check references and past performance, do you look at just the references that the contractor gives you, or do you solicit references outside of that? And how far back in time do you go to look at past performance, and what's the geographic scope of that?
A very good question. The reference checks are based on the references that are supplied by the bidder, and whether it's a project that's 2 days old or 10 years old, if that's the reference, we'll call the agency and obtain the information. We rely on our experience with the contractor. Most of the local contractors we've dealt with frequently, we know the nuances with each of the contractors, and all of the local contractors are very qualified to do our work.
Well, I'd like to see at some point reconsideration of that process, so we expand the scope of references. I mean, this is like someone applying for a job and you just check the references that they give you, and of course they're going to give you the happy ones. You're not going to find out the problematic ones. Same with past performance. I think we ought to look beyond just the city of Prescott's experience and look at other communities. Is that going to cause you heartburn, Mr. City Attorney?
No. I was just thinking how one would do that. I suppose they would have to ask, the public works folks would have to ask for project lists, essentially, rather than references, and contact names, you know, similar project, a list of similar projects completed in the last 5 years, you know, to the one that's being bid, along with the owner, whether it's a public entity or private, contact name, and then the city would sort of pick one or which ones or all it would contact as far as references, because that would be really the only sort of practical way of doing it. Other than calling sort of every municipality in the region and finding out if you've worked with this contractor, which seems a little bit tough.
You also have other mechanisms in place. You have the registrars, you have the Better Business Bureau. So if they have a good standing with the registrar, then you can call them up, or you can call the Better Business Bureau. Yeah. But I mean, there's mechanisms.
No, I understand that, but I think in terms of asking, rather than ask for references, maybe it ought to be a project list over a certain period of time, where projects that are similar to the one being bid, so that you find out, A, that the contractor's actually done work similar, because paving, this is my own sort of pea-brained understanding, paving a road and utilities work can be completely different type of projects. Underground versus surface, we heard those terms today. So you'd ask for, I suppose, a list of similar projects along with the owner and a contact name and number, and then public works staff would be contacting those folks rather than saying, give us three references, because as we all know, if you have half a brain, you're going to give the 3 of the best references ever, versus a list of projects. Then staff would contact those to find out. And then again, I don't think it's unreasonable, really be sort of more of a business decision or policy decision. We could ask for a list of lawsuits or litigation or disputes that the contractor's been in, say, for the last 5 years, and then look at those and verify. That's an option. Again, I don't know if it becomes sort of overly cumbersome to do it for every project, or at a certain threshold, that's when we start asking for it. But that's certainly legally allowable. It really becomes sort of a business or policy decision.
Okay. Charlie.
All right, Mayor, thank you. Steve, a couple technical questions on this one. We're going to be replacing existing infrastructure due to age. Was this project potholed, and
Yes.
What does our subsurface look like? Is there any rock that we encountered? And because we're upsizing, are the trenches going to have to be increased in size?
The trenches will be slightly increased. I believe we're going from like 6-inch to 8-inch, so it's an inch on each side, so it's very small. We're not going from a foot to 8 feet wide. Most of the trenches are in, pipelines are in existing locations, so it's already been disturbed in some way, shape, or form. We do have a soils report on the project, and I don't recall what specifically was in that report, but it was part of the bid package. It's part of the design plans. It was all available to the contractors to bid. The rock, the pipe, there was a third one.
I think that pretty well covered the first question. The secondary part is this discussion about the bypass pumping.
Yes.
For that area. What's the discussion that's gone on with the proposed contractor about the need or not having a need to bypass pumping for the sewer system in that area?
Since during the pre-award conference, we did talk to them about that, and Mr. Minor could expand on this if I don't hit all the key points. But the bypass pumping is for heavy flows, and since the pipe is in the same trench in the same location, it's going to be reconnected at the end of each night in some fashion. It'll be tested, and then it'll be active. And during the evening hours, the line should have minimal flows at the time they'll be working. So if there is a need for bypass pumping, we have a line item to cover that.
Okay, so I'd like to talk about that one a little bit more.
Okay.
In particular, I'm curious what flow is coming through that sewer main, because if they're working in the evenings on the weekends, as an example, pretty busy downtown, plus you've got a hotel and residential.
Right.
So
I see
I'd like to hear about that.
Okay. While Al is walking up, I'll start. The hotel and Whiskey Row sewer lines go behind in the alley there and do not go in the same pipe that we're replacing. Okay. The courthouse Bashford Court area are the buildings that go into this line. So at night, the courthouse is closed, and most of Bashford Court closes up fairly early by 9 or 10 in the evenings. And we're only working Sunday night through Thursday night. Friday, Saturday night are non-work days.
Okay. My turn? Okay, so the flows that we have here will be maintained by a pump. Everything having to do with the normal procedure of pumping sewage and bypassing sewage will be done here. The equipment that we use for these flows, which happens to be less than 400 gallons a minute, will be something that we have a half a dozen of in my warehouse. It's small equipment. It's more or less incidental to what we do out there. When you're talking about major concerns, well, let me go ahead and say that during the day you have the sewer passed through gravity. You tie back into the existing, and so it becomes a non-issue during the day, and then you pump during the night during your removal operations and your reinstallation operations. Where you get into serious bypass situations is like what I've done for the city of Flagstaff, where I replaced their transmission main from the city all the way out to Wildcat Sewer Treatment Plant. And that's running somewhere around this side or that side of 2,000 gallons per minute. And you have to run 12-inch pumps 24 hours a day on something like that. So we do have extensive experience when it comes to bypass sewer. To the extent that if you have a failure on a transmission main going to the treatment plant, the main and one and only main 36-inch line that runs full, and you're bypassing it, you merely just either plug up the city or you have a major catastrophe. And so we do know the risks involved when it comes to bypass sewage. This one, relatively speaking, is incidental to the actual replacement of the sewer itself. Now, I don't want to make it seem trivial. You're going to be seeing everything you would ordinarily get. Cost-wise, it's nothing for me. We just have that as an incidental equipment, small equipment. And so, furthermore, with the way that the engineer has this designed, it's the very best way you can design a remove and replace sewer project, by being right on top of the main. That's the very best. We had a situation over on Virginia Street where the engineer offset it, where you're putting in the new main just offset to the old main. That's a very, very bad situation. You don't want to have that. There you get into some serious bypass issues and serious locate issues and actual trench cave-ins and other dangerous things when you do that. This particular project, engineered by Gary Kelly, was done very well, and everything on it is exactly the way I like to see it in terms of bypass for sewer. So.
Okay. So 2 follow-up questions just so that I'm clear. My understanding is that your bid, that line item was $15 for bypass. So you're saying it's incidental and included in what you're proposing to do?
Well, yeah, it's actually incidental, and you may take note that it's on one job and not on the other, and you're pumping both. Okay. For example, it's not on Pleasant at all, and yet you're pumping on Pleasant too. Sometimes they get it in there, sometimes they don't. It just doesn't make any difference to me.
Okay. And then, Steve, my follow-up question back to the initial set of questions. If that infrastructure is pretty old, do we actually know that it's where we think it is? Or are we going to run into a situation like Iron Springs Road and other places where we start digging and the pipe's not there?
That was the third part of your first question. I was trying to remember. The potholing. Yes, we have done potholes on this project, and we do know where the lines are.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, Mayor, thank you. I have no problem with any of the bidders. It sounds like, Mr. Minor, he really knows what he's doing, and he's proven that in past jobs as well. But this is $2,207 that separates first place from second place. my no vote is just going to reflect a clear understanding of the bid process by some of the bidders and the time that we're allotting to answer these questions. It seems like it's getting shoved through pretty quick, so that's it.
Anyone else? Comments from the public? Okay.
Mayor, Council, Chris Graff. Both these projects have similar things, but this one has yet another caveat to it. If you take the items that are being shown as not needed or incidental, this bid would be considered materially unbalanced. With that, I mean, if we remove those two items from Capital's bid and Asphalt Paving's bid, we're actually $7,000 cheaper than Capital's bid. Material unbalanced bid is a bid that doesn't give the city the lowest price as it's represented. And this is actually the case in this bid. So again, I feel like yet again Pandora's box has been opened today. I don't think we had many questions on how to bid a job up until 5 or 10 minutes ago. Unbalanced bids are not good for the citizens or the taxpayers and not good for the community. And it doesn't give us contractors a level playing field to play in this competitive bidding arena.
Anybody comment? Thank you, sir. Response?
The only thing I can respond to the bypass pumping is that each contractor is able to approach the project in their own manner. We identified the potential need for bypass pumping on this project as a line item, and a contractor may choose to say it's incidental, such as capital improvements. Another contractor might say, I need to have some money in there to recover their costs for what they see their need is or for their overall project. So in that manner, we don't see any imbalance. Each contractor is allowed to approach it their own way. And if the engineer has an estimate, it's an estimate of what he knows. He's an engineer. The contractor actually does the work in the ground. They may have some other ideas. So we feel very confident that Capital Improvements has done a good job for the city and will continue to do a good job.
Okay. Again, the recommendation stands?
Yes.
Okay. Council, your decision?
Mayor, move to award city contract number 2016-026 for the North Montezuma Street Pavement and Utility Improvement Project to Capital Improvement LLC in the amount of $837,961.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Vote, please.
Passes 5-2. Councilwoman Wilcox and Mayor Pro Tem Kuknio dissenting.
Okay. Let's go to item G.
Item G, award of city contract number 2015-183 to SAK Construction LLC for cured-in-place sewer pipe rehabilitation during a one-year period on an individual job order basis, utilizing pricing through the Cooperative Purchasing Network, contract number R5143, in an amount not to exceed $500,000.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. The city annually budgets for the repair, rehabilitation, and/or replacement of our aging sewer mains. These mains are often constructed of petrified clay pipe and plagued with fractures, offset joints, root intrusion, and susceptible to sanitary sewer overflow. The cure-in-place process is more cost-effective and it is less intrusive. So the item before you is to approve a unit price contract for the rehabilitation of sanitary sewer mains by installation of cured-in-place pipe. This work is necessary to support the city's ongoing program to reline our deteriorated pipes the collection mains, and this is also to comply with the requirement of ADEQ. I am here, as well as Scott Gregorio and Craig Dossett, to answer any questions you may have.
Over here.
Thank you, Mayor. Henry, you and I have talked about this several times. I remember when this first came to council, and I know that there was some concerns for other council members, but I personally looked this company up, and not to get in lengthy discussion or just to pontificate how much I know about the product. It's good for the city, it's good for our department, and it's good for the our total mass daily load that's happening to Watson Lake. In so many words, this is a no-brainer, and I'll be voting yes for this one.
Charlie.
Mayor, thank you. And I missed the very first meeting that this came up, but was at the second one. And I think the issue really revolved, from my perspective, that we did not have a city contract to enter into. We had their proposal and some of the information about the company, but we now have a contract to talk about. Cast in place pipe makes a lot of sense for Prescott and what we're dealing with. My one area of interest is we originally were looking at, I think, over $1 million to allocate towards this. And depending on what the backlog of work is, I'm willing to support that not to exceed number going up, because I know we have a backlog of work. So I'm asking the city manager, Public Works, is this enough to get us through this year, or do we have it in the budget to expand what this is? Because this is a cheaper way for us to do these repairs than digging up streets and all types of things like that.
Well, Mayor and Council, Public Works Director, and his staff can certainly comment on the budgetary aspects of it. But we certainly have projects lined up, and the original recommendation, as you have indicated, was for much more than this. Many questions were raised, and there seemed to be an interest in the council to get used to this particular approach, trenchless, approach to sewer pipe rehabilitation. So we scaled it back. We provided the contract. We provided more information. We've indicated projects in which it was used locally. We provided more references now, and so forth. So the projects are there of several times this amount. They're lined up. The funding is in place. I think it was over $1 million to start. Public Works was suggesting 750, and we arrived at 500. But if we want to do or authorize a higher figure, that's certainly in the budget, and we can do that.
And going to that for a second, again, I think the big holdup was the contract initially, just not having something that we could hold in our hands and say, we understand what this relationship with this company is going to be.
Yeah, and here's how it works. Right. You issue it, you go out, you TV camera the line, you jointly develop an estimate or a scope of work.
Correct.
You have a unit price contract that's already in place. You figure up all that calculation. There's a meeting of the minds, and here's the amount for line A.
Correct. And I actually watched this on Modern Marvels the other day. So I would be supportive if there are others in upping this amount so that we can get to work on catching up our backlog.
Public Works, Councilman, Public Works is suggesting 750.
Okay.
Gene.
With all the background information you've given us now, and having read the complete contract word for word, much to the chagrin of the city attorney, I did catch one little typo, which you fixed. I have a lot more confidence in this company coming in and doing the work, and it seems to me that it would be a lot more efficient to have a contract with them to do a higher amount. $1 million would be fine with me. There must be some mobilization cost on their part to get out, to be here and get the work done. So, and we know it needs to be done, and we have the funding. So I would support a contract for $1 million.
Well, we appreciate Councilwoman Wilcox. As city manager stated, the work is there. We have the funding for this budget. As I am told by staff, and please see if you agree, the $500,000 is enough for this contractor to come once do the work, they'll be out, and $500,000 is gone fairly quickly, but with excellent results. So we appreciate it. You are correct. The 750 would do more. Originally, we asked for 1.5 million to 750,000 per year, basically. So the 750 would do it. And as it states in also in the document, we have done this similar work in Prescott with great success. I know Councilman Blair generally asks, how long is the warranty? This is like any other. It's a 1-year warranty like a brand new, but if you saw the flyer, the design for this is to have a lifespan of 100 years. And this has been practiced all over the country with all success. So either way you decide, we certainly would comply and do our best.
Okay. Charles, is that you?
Yep. I've got a question back to the city manager, because you know the details of the budget much better than us. And so I'm looking to you for a price recommendation, because I think what I'm starting to hear, the consensus is that our concerns are allayed and it's time to move this forward.
Well, I think the Public Works Director indicated that the initial recommendation was $1.5 million for 2 years. That is $750,000 a year. And what they are suggesting is, yes, the amount of work will still be there, but in their overall work program, they have a lot of things to do. So in terms of capacity and so forth, and allocating staff resources to this particular project, they were planning on a $750,000 per year level, and that appears to be the recommendation today, even though the next year, if the council is inclined to approve the budget, it would be another $750,000 next year.
Okay, thank you.
2 things real quick. Number one, I watched this process the last time they were here. And I think it would be absolutely wonderful if you invite this group of people and the new council to watch that process as well when they come back to town. Second of all, Craig, welcome back.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Comments from the public?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
The motion? Need the motion.
Before I make a motion, I'd like to make a statement that this monies for this is from Streets and Open Space and cannot be used for the PRSP. Having said that.
Wait a minute, it's from the wastewater fund.
Yeah. Oh, wastewater. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that correction, Council. I know. Dang it. I recommend to move to award contract number 2015-183 to SAK Construction LLC for cured in-place sewer pipe rehabilitation for a 1-year period on an individual job order basis, utilizing contract pricing, the Cooperative Purchasing Network, TCPN, contract number R5143, and the amount not to exceed $750,000.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Vote, please.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else to come before the council? We're adjourned.